Hello. So the first thing to say is that Emily's Walking Book Club loves The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett. We all unanimously really enjoyed it. We found it charming, we found it witty, we found it just the thing to lift our spirits at this very grim time. We found it quietly revolutionary. And yeah, so 10 out of 10, really solid recommendation to read. I would also say a great stocking filler. It's very thin, as you can see. This is the original hardback, unfortunately without its dust jacket. You can see it's a novella, it's a tiny little book, just the thing to slip into someone's stocking. The book is about the Queen, who stumbles upon a mobile library and becomes an avid reader. So I think a lot of us can bizarrely relate to this very well, because although none of us are royal or live in Buckingham Palace, we're all readers really, and we've all had that experience of perhaps not thinking ourselves as readers and then being grabbed by a book and by the experience of reading and finding something brilliant in that, something unexpectedly brilliant. So, you know, perhaps it's a particularly good book club book or book for people who love reading, because there's a lot in it that we all kind of passionately wanted to discuss about the power of books, really. The first thing we talked about though was the Queen, which really divided the group. Some people, I'd say probably the majority of us, were quite quietly not supportive of the monarchy, but unbothered by it. With a few actually also really feeling very fond of the Queen in particular. I think one or two people said they found that she was such a constant in our lives, that she was so old, she'd seen through so much, and her kind of meticulous politeness, correctness, sense of duty, they found very soothing and reassuring, especially in these times where everything is so all over the place, and how unlike a politician she is in that respect. The group does also have its Republicans, and one or two were particularly vociferous, but even the Republicans loved the book. So we talked a bit about the Queen, and then we talked about reading and her experience of reading and what books kind of give to the Queen who, you know, on the face of it has so much, finds something completely unexpected in books. First of all, Alan Bennett very clearly shows the development of her sense of empathy, and her curiosity about other people. I think everyone probably knows that reading fiction in particular is shown to increase your levels of empathy as a human being. Of course, you're spending all that time putting yourself in the mind of someone else, feeling what they're feeling, thinking their thoughts. So it stands to reason that that's going to seep into your everyday life. I think for the Queen, it's a particularly extreme case. Bennett shows that all her social interactions really are so carefully managed. You know, she has these awful occasions of opening things and sort of tea parties and things like that, and all the talk is small talk. All the questions she asks, people, they've been warned about them beforehand. They prepare their answers. So she really can't develop an understanding with fellow human beings, really. And she's so deprived of this. And so then in books, she sort of drinks so deeply of this empathy and suddenly starts thinking about other people in the household and other people's feelings. I'm going to read a tiny bit out. This is on page 31. So, the appeal of reading, she thought, lay in its indifference. There was something lofty about literature, Books did not care who was reading them, or whether one read them or not. All readers were equal, herself included. Literature, she thought, is a commonwealth, letters a republic. Actually, she had heard this phrase, the Republic of Letters, used before at graduation ceremonies, honorary degrees and the like, though without knowing quite what it meant. At that time, talk of a republic of any sort she had thought mildly insulting, and in her actual presence tactless to say the least. It was only now she understood what it meant. Books did not differ. All readers were equal, and this took her back to the beginning of her life. As a girl, one of her greatest thrills had been on VE night, when she and her sister had slipped out of the gates and mingled unrecognised with the crowds. There was something of that, she felt, to reading. It was anonymous, it was shared, it was common. And she, who had led a life apart, now found that she craved it. Here in these pages and between these covers, she could go unrecognised. So, I mean, I so strongly agree with this idea of reading being some kind of common ground. To me, that is fundamental to everything I really believe in, you know, the walking book club, recommending books, giving books. I feel what I love about books is that they bring people together. They're for everyone. If you've read a book, someone else has read a book, you can have a conversation even if you have nothing else in common, you have that book in common. So we talked a bit about that, about the common ground of books and the empathy. We talked about how, in a way, reading became the Queen's kind of naughty secret. I think someone compared it to having a little bottle of gin. And the humour with which Bennett treats it as she's, you know, in a carriage and finds out that she can, it's much more fun if she sort of waves and then has her book sort of, you know, just below the window so no one can see that actually she's reading. And then we also talked about the danger of books and how specifically in this book they're shown to be revolution, to inspire revolution. I don't want to give away the ending here, but it's pretty radical, and it's really the Queen's reading that is shown to turn her into quite a disruptive force, or as disruptive as she can be, because she's also shown to be, ironically, extremely powerless, really, in a lot of situations. And so we then kind of came on to this thing that the Queen, it sounds completely mad talking about the Queen like this, about the Queen so much wanting to have a voice. There's a very powerful bit at the end where she describes the experience of listening to Mozart and Beethoven and a voice, and she suddenly realises she has no voice. And we felt that this was, you know, what does she mean by that? I mean, of course she has a voice, we all have voices, but we felt that she meant she wasn't heard, that she couldn't express herself, and nobody listened to herself as an individual, rather than seeing her as the crown, you know, a symbol, not a person. And we talked a little bit about our own experiences of finding our voices, whether that's by writing or in some other way, you know, in having meaningful conversations with people, or painting, or creating something in some way that felt of ourselves. So it was a really good discussion. And then the other element that was also particularly strong was libraries, because the Queen becomes a reader thanks to a chance encounter with a mobile library, which of course you don't really see anymore. So we talked about what libraries meant to us. Personally, my real meaningful encounters with libraries began since having children. And, you know, being a mother with young children, I think, can be quite isolating. You spend so much time with them, and you're kind of catering to their needs of naps and meals and nappies and the rest of it. One particularly grim thing is in the winter, if your child has a nap and then they wake up, by the time they're up, it's often nearly dark. And you're so kind of lonely at home and you desperately want to go out, but where do you go that's free? You actually taking a toddler to a cafe isn't that much fun if it isn't tea time and you don't want to have to pay for food and they can't really roam around. So actually I started taking Vita when she was a toddler to the library a lot. Specifically at that time, the kind of after nap, dark afternoons. And I'd go to my local library and I'd go into the kids section and she'd sort of tear all the books off the shelves and we'd sit down and maybe read a couple. She'd crawl through sort of tunnels of shelves and it was a space for her to be where I could also be. And brilliantly, it was where, more often or not, there was another mum with her child. And so you could talk to someone. So I suppose libraries as a space for bringing people together as much as it being a space to discover books and what they really meant to me at that time. And when I think about them, that's really my overriding feeling of libraries is that chance encounter, not with books, but with people too. So it was a great discussion. It was lovely to see so many of you there. Although, of course, the numbers were limited. We wore masks. We were keeping a distance. And, thank you for bearing with Emily's Walking Book Club over this sort of awful year. It's been wonderful to have all your thoughts, either in person or by email. I hope these videos have been helpful to you. I hope the reading has helped get you through these tough times, and onwards to 2021. I think we've got some really strong books to start the year off, and I'm looking forward to sharing them with you. Okay, thanks. So here we are gathering before we set off on our walk. We meet just down the road from Daunt Books Hampstead on Southend Road. There are these beautiful skeleton trees all lining our way. So it was grim weather, but we're still in good spirits. And here we are stopping. I think this was when we were having the great chat about libraries. I love this spot, this kind of glade surrounded by trees. You could see the grounds kind of carpeted in autumn leaves, although we're now obviously in the middle of winter. What a beautiful day it turned out in spite of the bad weather. So yes, happy Christmas to you all. It's been so great sharing these books with you this year.